Assalamu alaikum, everyone. We have with us today is fantastic, a fabulous singer and songwriter from Pakistan, Zeb Bangash, a star with a huge international following. उनकी अपनी एल्बम्स तो बहुत ही खूबसूरत है, खुद लिखती भी हैं, कंपोज भी करती हैं, गाती भी हैं. पेमोना is one of my favorite from her albums, but she's also across the border. बॉलीवुड की भी उन्होंने और हमारे लोकल फिल्म्स ड्रामास के लिए बहुत ज़्यादा गाया, जिनमें से कुछ साउंड ट्रैक्स I'm just going to name a few: Highway, Bin Roy, Manto, Homan Jahan, Fitur, Lala Begum, Parvaz Hai Junoon, Pare Hat Love, Superstar, and TV series के भी, जिसमें से एक Diyare Dil is again one of my favorites. Yaare Man जो है, we have all seen her in her favorite Coke studio. Recently, Fahad Hussain का जो इन्होंने मेरा जोड़ा किया है, that's beautiful, and I'm also in love with her Kuch To Kategi Zindagi, where she's singing with Saad Sultan. So we are so happy to have you here on Mera Bachpan. Thank you so much, Zeb, for coming.
Thank you. I'm so happy to finally connect with you again after years. Hum log bhi kafi, we've known each other for a while. A little post Bachpan, but it's been a while.
That's true. This was actually, to be precise, 2012, and we were in Houston, and Zeb and Hanya had come with Center Stage. उसके tour के लिए US में आए थे, and Houston में I was able to document you guys for a couple of days, and I remember, still have very fresh memories. It's beautiful spending time with you guys. एंड ज़ेब, मैं साथ साथ आपको और अपने व्यूअर्स को बताती चलूँ कि मेरा बचपन जो है, इट इज़ एन ऑफ शूट ऑफ बचपन की कहानियाँ. और बचपन की कहानियाँ इज़ अ पॉडकास्ट, एक इनिशिएटिव है जो मैंने 1 साल पहले शुरू किया था, बिकॉज आई थॉट दैट देयर वाज अ ह्यूज गैप वेयर वी डिड नॉट हैव एनी क्वालिटी रिसोर्स फॉर चिल्ड्रन. सो इट इज़ प्राइमरली टारगेटिंग डायस्पोरा पाकिस्तानी किड्स, और उसमें हम बचपन की कहानियाँ बेसिकली, एंड आई यूज़ बोथ इंग्लिश एंड उर्दू ताकि बच्चे उसको समझ सके आसानी से. और जो हमने कहानियाँ बचपन में पढ़ी, जैसे इत्तेफाक में बरकत है, कछवा और खरगोश, यू नो, ऑल द स्टोरीज दैट वी ग्रू अप लिसनिंग टू, तो वो की. एंड द आइडिया वाज टू preserve Urdu language, and also to revive the art and medium of Urdu story narration and the lessons that we learned while we were growing up. So I would love to actually start. I would love to have your thoughts on that project, and then we can take it from there.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is something that I've always felt very, very strongly about. I think it's recently, someone I know who actually, and we know a lot of people like that who are from Pakistan, especially if you grow up in a certain kind of background. So aapko, especially recently, you don't really have a connection or to history or identity the way, our grandparents did, or even our parents did. And some of us did who are old enough. So, we had some kind of, linkages to different parts of the country, different I remember जब छोटे थे तो the first book that my father got me, which I learnt by rote before I could even speak, or before I could even read, was Tot Patot Ki Kahaniyan. It was a small book, and I didn't know how to read, but I had kind of वो सारे मैंने एक था लड़का टोट पटोट, नाम था उसका मीसलोट, that kind of वो मुझे रटते हुए थे मैंने, and I could, that was one of my big tricks that I used to do when people, when people were over. So I mean, that gives you a kind of frame of reference. A language is so much more than just a language, because usme, there's so much that's ingrained inside of it. And because we didn't, because of my father's insistence, I read some Urdu journals growing up, Urdu digests, or ye jasusi novel padhti thi, and things like that. And I didn't go for the, very popular senior Cambridge O-levels. They used to have easy Urdu. And I remember I fought with my father, but he said, you're not doing easy Urdu. Even though Urdu is not our mother tongue, like, Urdu is, but it's our national language. So it was so my father insisted. He said, there's no need for you to do easy Urdu. You've grown up learning Urdu from day one, and you've learned Urdu. You read and write in Urdu. You live in Pakistan. You should do proper Urdu. Or wahan pe jaake, then that's when I started reading Urdu novels for the first time. Now what's happened is that this idea of, like, easy Urdu, making it more bilingual, like, kind of, parents are almost encouraging their kids to do that back home. And as a result, what's happening is exactly that, is that we don't have an investment in creating, stories, creating ideas, creating a base for children uh, for interacting with Urdu, if you're, say, not in Pakistan, or if you're going to English medium schools, So something like this is so lovely. Actually, recently I sang this on Allama Iqbal's अभी बरस उनकी उस पे anniversary पे November में I was commissioned by PAF, and I sang Shaheen O Mahi, which is, you must know of it. It's such a beautiful story. I mean, of course, it's बहुत मुश्किल, मतलब बहुत वो फारसी में है और हम नहीं समझ सकते हैं. But I felt a bit robbed, because I thought कि this is such a beautiful parable, कि एक मछली का बच्चा, एक उसकी इमेजरी इतनी खूबसूरत है, उसके एक शाहीन के बच्चे से बात कर रहे हैं, गुफ्तगू कर रहे हैं, the beautiful things that come out of it, that make you believe in yourself, stay focused, stay positive, that kind of thing. I would have loved to hear those stories as a child, or I would have loved to have read a comic book on that parable as a child. I know that I would have really vibed with it. And I felt almost a bit robbed that all we ever learned were, like, things in English. So yeah, sorry, very long-winded. But
no, I actually find it so interesting that you say this and you highlight specifically the easy Urdu part, because मैंने metric किया हुआ है, और now I'm actually so happy that I did what I did, because there was a time when I used to fight with अम्मी अब्बू ना कि आपने क्यों OA levels क्यों नहीं हमने किया, why did you do metric, right? और अब मैं सोचती हूँ कि when I talk to people like young kids back home, और मैं शायद because it's been 20 plus years that we've been out of Pakistan, तो मैं किसी से बात करती हूँ, I'm asking them कि आप कौन सी शायरी पढ़ते हैं, हम तो कोई शायरी नहीं पढ़ते. मैंने कहा what do you mean, like हमने इकबाल पढ़ा, हमने और इतनी, और शायद जो उर्दू भी था, that was basically that. So he said नहीं, हम तो कुछ नहीं करते, easy उर्दू में तो ये कुछ नहीं है. And exactly what you said. Now I write Urdu poetry as well, and I started writing it much later in life. This was actually in Houston. So I always say कि Houston के मूड ने मुझे शायर बना दिया. But so there was always that thing in me. लेकिन वो कहाँ से आ रहा था? वो बचपन से आ रहा था, क्योंकि हमने पढ़ा था. And again, इकबाल जो हमारे कोर्स वर्क में पढ़ा है, like never really made an effort कि बाहर से कुछ पढ़ें, लेकिन जो कोर्स वर्क में पढ़ा था, उससे इतनी इंस्पिरेशन मिली थी कि I still feel that when he's referring to Shaheen, he's talking about me. I am that Shaheen. So as a child, it's amazing that as a child you were able to relate to somebody like Iqbal, that he's speaking to you directly. Or इसीलिए even in my podcast, I decided to I thought कि अच्छा मैं इकबाल क्यों नहीं इंट्रोड्यूस कराती बच्चों को. So we did all, like, and when I say we, because I make it very engaging with the kids, so they're like 8-9 जो उनकी नज़में हैं, जिसमें जुगनू और बुलबुल और पहाड़ और गुलेरी, और इतने उनके प्यारे मैसेजेस हैं और इतने स्ट्रॉन्ग मैसेजेस हैं कि the idea is कि अगर ये मैसेजेस बच्चों के साथ रह जाते हैं, if it stays with them, then I would consider myself successful, that they've been able to. So yeah, I'm sorry again.
No, this is so true. Not at all. It's so lovely. I'm so happy that you're doing this, and I think it is a real service. Also, I think वो चराग तले अंधेरा की भी बात होती है. Some of the best Urdu in the world, some of the best writers in the world in Urdu, some of the best shairi in the world in Urdu happens in Pakistan and has been happening in Pakistan. And I think that's why we take it for granted. When I go across the border, and वहाँ पे लोग मेरे से मंगवाते हैं. When I asked them, what do you want? They said, हमें शायरी की किताब ला दो. You know, कोई नया शायर हो तो ले आओ. And you know, that's people who can read and write Urdu, but a lot of people, they even asked me for Urdu books that then they wanted me to like just read out. And you know, so people are so interested in the language, especially creative people, and somehow we are not using it as a resource. So this is so beautiful for you to reintroduce this into children's life.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, so let's talk about Zeb's Bachpan, and I'm not gonna repeat that the things that you have. I know that you've given a lot of interviews and you have shared a lot of stuff. So I'm trying to. So we know that you were born in Peshawar and your early childhood was in Ahmedabad. Your father was in army, so you were all over Pakistan, right? You experienced. Sara Pakistan aapne dekha. But my question is that how did that early childhood experience shaped you as a person that you are today?
It's tough to say completely. I don't know. I think one thing is ke moving is the idea of self. What happens is that I'm now partly living in Baltimore and partly living in Pakistan. So मैं ये देखती हूँ कि डायस्पोरा में बहुत देखती हूँ कि कुछ लोग होते हैं कि वो पाकिस्तान छोड़ के फिर वो सिर्फ पाकिस्तान की बात ही करते हैं. Like they can't assimilate, emotionally speaking. और कुछ लोग होते हैं कि वो ऐसे छोड़ते हैं कि वो emotionally वापस connect नहीं कर सकते. It's painful for them either way. I think as a child, for me to be able to like feel and really like go in a place and yet leave it behind and still feel like myself, and also like that whole thing, I think it just makes you like a professional, like, I don't know, immigrant.
Right, immigrant and an adaptable. Right. No,
So that happened, I think, especially stuff that I'm noticing right now. Like, when I hear people say ke ab main nahi jaunga wapas, ya ab main nahi jaungi wapas kyunki ye hua tha wo tha, and I'll be like, yeah, but वापस क्यों नहीं जाएंगे, like I don't understand it. Or like if they say कि हाँ यार बस ये कि जो भी कर लो, नहीं यहाँ पे नहीं हो सकता, यहाँ पे नहीं हो सकता, even that I don't understand, because I feel like the world it's God's world, and he puts us on this place, and he takes, and especially when you look at our own forefathers' histories, like when you look at a land like Pakistan, everyone's come from somewhere like 300-400 years ago, and we've settled in this place. And so like that kind of thing in history, you saw a lot, people taking their land with them, within them, and then creating an iteration of it elsewhere on the planet. So that's what I get from it. And I think what I also get is another kind of adaptability, which it's interesting, because one of the biggest achievements of the Pakistan Army, I think, in a place like Pakistan is that I know now apparently things might be different, or from what I hear, things change, and there's a lot, but there was a lot of discipline in the army when we were growing up, and there was a lot of sameness. It was uniform living. And yes, there was hierarchy in terms of, मतलब आपके rank पे आपको hierarchy होती थी, लेकिन ऐसे नहीं है कि आप, अमीरी गरीबी पे नहीं होती थी, उर्दू इंग्लिश पे नहीं होती थी, where you're from, it's never like if you were a Balochi or a Sindhi or a Pathan or Punjabi, like that was not something that was in us. So there's this cohesiveness there in terms of, it's not feudal like the rest of Pakistan. It's not very classist like the rest of Pakistan. My childhood wasn't, even though, and so I remember having, and wo cool uncool ka itna nahi hota tha, like everything was, I guess, uncool. So we all had a very,
that's so true.
we were all like in it together, and we had a grand time. And I think finally the most important thing is that it was a very simple life, a simple childhood that I had. And I grew up without any. My father was quite senior by the time I was born, because I was born later in like the whole sibling order. But but hamare matlab, you get big houses, but it's, you know, like the houses aren't filled with like fancy gadgets and fancy things. So things was not a wo, but what we had was, like, you know, the open grounds outside. We had the clubs that we used to go to.
Right.
We used to play, we used to swim, and we used to go cycling on the, it was very safe, so we used to go cycling on the roads. And you know, there were little like, so वो जो एक लड़कियों का ज़्यादा होता नहीं है when you're growing up in Pakistan, but I actually had like street friendships, you know, like people that I used to just meet in the mohalla, like, you know, in the afternoon I'd go and I'd meet my friends and hang out with them and then come back. So I think that those are some of the things that have really shaped how I look at a place, because यहाँ पे भी जब मैं आई हूँ, I can't wait. Like the minute the weather is we get a good day, I don't want to go to a restaurant. I don't want to, like, you know, go to a place or whatever. I just want to like wear my walking shoes and just put on my thing and go for a walk. And that to me is like the best entertainment.
Right. Tell me something, Zeb, what is the most liberating thing about being a child?
I think there's an unaware, there's a, like, your curiosity is like, everyone indulges your curiosity. I think that's the most liberating thing. And also there's no, for me personally also, there's no consciousness of body. Like physically इस तरह नहीं आप वो करते, like, you know, you're not conscious of yourself, but you're really, people are attentive to you, and they and they allow you to do things like that, ask you questions, asking them questions.
Right. So how do you keep your the child in you alive? Like, do you have a special place for that, or you feel that you've grown up, or do you still feel that
I feel very resentful of the fact that I've been made to grow up, even now. Yes, I do. This is true. And I mean, like, my husband pointed it out to me. He said, you know, you're like holding on to certain things that are like you. So, like, I mean, and some of it is not very like practical, you know, some of it is not very practical. But I think I got lucky because I'm in a kind of a field where that can actually pay off in a strange way. You know, if I'd been an accountant, I would be in deep trouble. But since I'm an artist, you know, that stuff works. I mean, I keep the child alive in every way. I love to just laugh. I love, you know, I know people think that it's better to have like, and article there's this idea of like nerdiness being cool. So, you know, yeah, I mean, it's, all of that is fine, but I also love to just, like run around and do nothing and allow myself to. The other day I had a day off, and I decided that today I will do nothing. I closed all my phones. I did everything. I did absolutely nothing except like listen to music, you know, talk to friends, and it was really nice. I mean, I just keep the curiosity alive. If you're in the present, your child is in any case alive. I think one is a lot more engaged in the present moment, and in one's own surroundings when one is a child. And as you grow up, there's all kinds of thoughts of past and present that, you know, plague us. So I try to do that in any which way that I can. Yeah.
Okay. You know, how I look at you, or how much I know of you, from that I see there's a very sense of calmness, you know, in you. I feel that there's you know, it's almost as if you found yourself, or you are at peace with yourself, let me put it that way. एक जैसे ठहराव, एक हम उर्दू का वर्ड बोलते हैं, तो वो फीलिंग आती है आपकी बातचीत से, आपकी पर्सनालिटी से. Or is it true, or is it something which I don't know, it's a perception?
I think perception.
Really?
My mother would really disagree with you.
Okay, okay, all right.
But I think what it, I think what it is that I mean, more than calmness. Yeah, I mean, I don't like conflict. That's for sure. I don't like
Okay,
conflict. So maybe that's what comes across. And I'm also a bit of a pleaser. So maybe that's what comes across. But you know, but I mean, matlab, in some ways, also, I do think that in the past, especially since I've started my training with my ustad, this
mm-hmm.
terao thing I am feeling in myself now. And pehle to
Okay,
I think I was very, I used to be very easily like distracted, very easily, like I'm impassioned about everything, you know.
okay,
So, but ये है कि अभी तो, yeah, I guess maybe some things have changed, and then I guess
okay.
marriage changes you.
Right. Okay, I
As
want
you
to go
know.
back to your exactly. I want to go back to your bachpan and ask you one of your fondest memory as a child that brings a huge smile on your face, even if you think about it right now.
Yeah, so one of my like fondest memories is being in the pool with my father in the summer. We used to go every day and early morning. We used to go to the pool sometimes twice a day. Like that's how active we were as a family. I must
Mm-hmm.
have been very small, but I remember, you know, I remember like standing by, you know, holding on to the railing and in the pool, inside the pool, when you know, you're holding on to the side. And ऐसे मैं कर रही थी with my feet, and my father said, "Come on, hop on," and he would like, I would like literally like a frog, like hop onto his back and hold his. And I still remember how small my hands used to look on his, like, you know,
Right. Yeah.
really like wide shoulders. And
Right.
I love swimming, so like swimming on my father's back like that, it used to like take me back and forth. And then he used to come out and say, "We did 5 lengths," and I used to feel so good. Also, because I didn't swim any of that, but I used to
Right.
feel कि मैं swimming करके. I've been swimming 5 lengths on me, like, you know, that kind. That's one of
Interesting.
my yeah, yeah.
How interesting is that? वही बात है ना कि you these are small things, but they're so precious, and you just cannot,
Yeah.
you know, they're in the moment, like you said, go present. When you're present, when you're fully aware of what's happening, you're able to feel it, right? And then you can never recreate those moments because they only happen.
Yeah.
Mm,
They're so they stay with you forever. I
yeah.
mean, why I talk about it is because, yeah, like this weekend it was a nice day out. And I saw recently, like, that, you know, in the pool I saw some uh like I saw there was a gentleman like with his young daughter, and he was
Mm,
helping her swim. And, you know, like, just looking at, I just kept like staring at them, and just with a big smile, because like it wasn't just that I remembered it, but it's like I felt it in my body. You know, I felt
mm,
that the thing, the water. I felt my father's shoulder. It's so interesting how deeply these things like stay with
mm,
you, you know, in
absolutely.
your senses. So it was really beautiful. And yeah, there's so many memories. I do have
Mm,
really beautiful memories from
mm.
childhood, and I think I'm quite lucky because of that. Yeah.
जी कोई बचपन का कुछ हमें कुछ सुनाएंगे माय व्यूअर्स को something that children can enjoy, that we as children enjoyed.
Yeah, we used to sing this song a lot जब मैं छोटी थी. We basically, Hania had this cassette Suhail Rana ki,
Mm-hmm.
and उसमें से सारे गाने हम गाते होते थे. So
Anya actually also came on the show and she sang Morni for us
yeah.
and Dosti. Aisa na
Oh,
tha.
I was okay. I could sing Lucy as well if you like, or I could sing.
Absolutely. Anything that
Yeah.
you would like.
Ah, dosti ऐसा नाता, दोस्ती ऐसा नाता, जो सोने से भी महंगा, जो सोने से भी महंगा. पहले परखो फिर बतलाओ, पहले परखो फिर बतलाओ, है यही तुमसे कहना दोस्ती, ऐसा नाता जो सोने से भी महंगा, जो सोने से भी महंगा। हो राहें बेगाने हैं और रास्ते भी बेगाने, राहें बेगानी हैं और रास्ते भी बेगाने, कदम कदम पर मिलते रहेंगे साथी अनजाने, साथी अनजाने। पहले परखो फिर बतलाओ, पहले परखो फिर बतलाओ, है यही तुमसे कहना दोस्ती, ऐसा नाता जो सोने से भी महंगा, जो सोने से भी महंगा।
So beautiful. Thank you so much. I was so tempted to sing with you, but I thought कि viewers ने मुझे मारना है और गालियाँ देनी है.
That's okay. I wish you had. बीच में I said पहले फरको फिर. I
It's
did the whole.
beautiful.
I was a total Pathan in the.
No, it's absolutely beautiful.
Thank you.
Okay, so I'm going to ask you another question, and then agar, if you get lucky, so you can please sing another song for us, जो भी आपको
Yeah,
पसंद हो.
sure.
So I really want to know about your relationship with your nani, because you mentioned that she was one of your biggest influences, and I shared a beautiful relationship with my nani. So जब भी कोई नानी की बात होती है मुझे वही याद आती हैं. एंड ऑन टॉप वो शायरा थी, वो फारसी भी बोलती थी, और उन्होंने ही आपका गाने का जो है वो टैलेंट को जैसे परखा था. तो अपना थोड़ा सा उनके साथ रिलेशनशिप बताएं, और स्पेशली इस एंगल से कि आपने उनसे क्या सीखा.
Actually, I mean, as you know, ये सारी चीजें हम लोग बाद में सोचते हैं. It's very retrospective because the relationship itself is feels very, very real and natural, and I think you feel it the most in loss when you lose them or with distance. So I think when I was away in college for the first time, that's when, I understood my mother, my father, and my nani in ways that I hadn't before. And with my nani specifically, I didn't realize, because मेरी और कोई मैं again like Papa says you were like the second fussel. So since I came later in their marriage, so by that time मेरे दादा दादी भी चले गए थे और मेरे नाना भी नहीं थे. मेरे बाकी बहन भाइयों ने, my older brothers and sisters, वो मेरे नाना को जानते थे लेकिन मैंने सिर्फ उनकी तस्वीर देखी. तो मेरे लिए जो वो एक ग्रैंड पेरेंट का एक प्यार होता है या वो एक्सपीरियंस, वो सारा कुछ मेरी नानी मुझे देती थी. फिर दूसरा ये था कि वो मतलब थी भी बहुत एक अनोखी सी इंसान थी, बिकॉज वो शी वाज पर्दे में पली बड़ी. हमें बताती थी कि जब आई थिंक मेरे ख्याल में 15 साल की उम्र में उनकी शादी हो गई थी, और बहुत ज्यादा शी वाज वेरी फेयर और व्हाटएवर and very beautiful. So apparently she used to wear 7 niqabs. So in her burqa, like she was that much of a household woman. From That's the kind of person, that's the kind of context that she was in. However, her relationship and her husband was very, like, he was very particular about her parda, but at the same time he was a very open-minded and lovely person about her. So he was extremely nice to her, very kind to her. he really encouraged her to run the house the way he did. And then every week he would get her, because she was very intelligent. So every week um, he would get her books to read, novels and poetry, and that's how she became so fluent in and so literary, is because of her. And then she would read the books. It was almost like a book club that she had with her spouse. And that evening, then they would sit and they would, over the weekends, they would sit and talk about what they'd read, what it meant, and so forth. And I think he was taken by how intelligent she was. But she lost him when she was around, I think in her late 40s or something, early 50s. And so after that, for the next 40 or so years that she lived, she became the matriarch of the family. And then was taking care of everything, and everything went through her. So उन्होंने खुद इतनी different किस्म की, मतलब एक life में उन्होंने 3-4 किस्म की जिंदगियां देखी थी. वो कई different मरहलों से निकली थी. और मतलब I think जो मेरे बचपन की सबसे अनोखी या इंटरेस्टिंग स्टोरीज है मेरी नानी के साथ, वो यही है कि मैं उनके साथ बैठ के उनकी बातें सुनती थी. और वहीं से वो जो एक आइडिया ऑफ कंटिन्यूम होता है ना, कि आप कहाँ से आए हैं और कौन है आप, और मतलब क्या क्या वैल्यूज हैं, वो वैल्यूज कैसे चेंज हुई हैं, क्या कैसे चेंज कराई गई हैं, ऑल ऑफ दैट स्टफ, लाइक यू गेट, आई थिंक व्हाट आई गॉट is a real sense of self. I also got a sense of history from her, in a way that was very, very powerful, and it continues to play a very powerful role in my work and the way I see myself. And then most of all, I saw her adaptability to change. And मतलब ये वो जनरेशन थी जिन्होंने वर्ल्ड वॉर्स भी देखे थे, जिन्होंने पार्टीशन भी देखी थी, मतलब उनकी जो बेस्ट फ्रेंड होती थी when she was growing up in Kohat, she was like a Sikh girl from a Sikh family, and she went to school with in a very, very diverse Kohat. And then after that it was a very different Kohat, and then she saw things break down and come back up again in a different iteration, but like she never changed and she never stopped enjoying. And that, I think, is the biggest lesson I took from her, because we get so freaked out by things that are happening around us, and we want to fight the changes or the catastrophes in a way that it changes us but doesn't change the catastrophe. So I think that's what I learned.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing that.
Oh,
yeah. I was also wondering if you're a songwriter as well, and with that sensibility, do you think that also comes from her partly?
Absolutely, because one of the things that she did for all her grandchildren was कि जब वो हमें ईदी देती थी तो वो एक लिफाफे में डाल के उसको अपने हाथ से एक शेर लिखती थी for each grandchild. So and she used to the songwriting aspect, absolutely. But I feel like I haven't really been able to write the songs that I really want to write. बल्कि I think कल ही मैं ये सोच रही थी कि maybe now's the time to really write the songs that I wanted to write, that have to do with how I grew up, actually.
Right, that would be fantastic, actually. Yeah, and good for us, because we'll get to hear that also. And you'll sing for us, inshallah. I want to come to parenting, and मैंने एक आपका जगह सुना था कि you said कि you were around 15 years old when your father was posted in Turkey, so you guys moved to Turkey. And वहाँ पे आपके वालिद साहब ने आपको कहा कि पढ़ाई तो हो जाएगी, but you need to learn the language and just take your backpack and go see the country. And you actually did that. So you were around 16 years of age. How did that specific experience change you, if it did? And from parents' perspective, I know because I have now two teenagers in the house, and it's very difficult at times to, to let go, and really see, or because you're afraid, as a parent you're afraid, and you're not sure if your kids are um, ready, enough to be. So I was just wondering from that perspective, that how was that experience, and in, again, retrospect, how important do you think it was, that it was the right time for your father to say that she was ready and it's time to let go?
So that's just one thing is that somehow, I don't know why it's like that, but my parents' parenting style is that. I mean, I remember I used to be, they're very unlike Desi parents. And now I just thought that, that's how everybody's parents were when I was growing up. Didn't realize, and I realized that it's as much of an anomaly. It's not a, like they were kind of strange in our family, because my aunts and uncles are not like them at all. But I thought that otherwise, they would be like everybody else. But actually, whether I go to India or Bangladesh or like all over South Asia, this is not the model of parenting. I don't know why. I think it has to do with their own, they're very independence loving people. Like they really respect freedom. And then they also really respect each other's space a lot. There's real boundaries in my parents' relationship. Like I'm sure they fight, but they never like fight in front of us. Like there's this kind of like, there's a very like, it's like that. And then also there's they were also very they're very God-fearing people. They're like faith. They have a lot of faith. I think that's what it is. And that doesn't mean that we didn't get into trouble. Like I want you to know that, each one of us has made a lot of mistakes. And sometimes I even, would speak to my mother and say, why did you do this? Why didn't you stop me? And she said, because you have to learn to make your own mistakes and you have to understand. But so you're right. It's a very delicate balance to like let the person go and then at the same time be around as a safety net when they fall. And it feels like unnecessary to do that, because if you don't let them go, then you won't have to be the net, But I think that I don't know, they chose to do that. So I think I just, that was just the context that I was brought up in. I think it helped me a lot because I was very anxious, and I told you I was a pleaser, and like the move to Turkey in the middle of my A levels and stuff was making me very, there weren't like schools that I could really, get into at the time. It was the middle of the year. I was very stressed out. Everyone that I knew was like applying for things, was like, everyone else's lives were going very smoothly. And I wanted some structure, and I was like, how am I going to get it? And so my father said to me, he said, look, I realize that there's no, we don't really know what's going to happen. And it's going to be many months now till we know exactly how this stuff will happen. But look at it as an opportunity. You're here, your parents are here, and just why don't you go, and you're in Turkey, you can, he said, I know right now it feels like the end of your, the world is ending because, तुम्हारा एक साल ज़ाया हो जाएगा. But actually, nobody is going to ask you. He's like, when you're getting your PhD, nobody's going to ask you, are you 35 or 34? Are you 27 or 28? Like, he's like, nobody's going to ask you that. So these things are not that important. Just do your thing and learn. He said continue to learn. So I would go to classes, but I was learning the language. And then and then once I'd learned the language, he said, you must also travel. And so I did that. And I did it with my friends, I did it on my own. It was just really nice. So it wasn't a complete shoot like that. It's not like, I can make like, it's not like I was surviving on my own. But yeah, in many ways, like they just chilled out about a certain thing, like, you know, that particular year, and they asked me to chill out about it. And he really pushed me. I guess he knows me, he's my father. So he really pushed me to, like, you know, engage my to engage with the new country, the new culture, so that my curiosity and thing is engaged and I feel happy. And it really was one of the happiest times of my life. And I've really understood now that this it made me realize that this whole idea of achievement and success and all of that, it's also like we just decided, like, who decides? Just a bunch of people decide कि इस एज पे ये कर लो, फिर ऐसे हो जाएगा, फिर वैसे हो जाएगा, फिर वैसे हो जाएगा. But like, actually nobody really knows what's going to happen to anyone. Also, I see so much burnout in, like, in people from my childhood, friends or family, people who worked really, really hard in school. And I don't know if there's many studies around this or not, but like sometimes when you push kids too much to constantly achieve, it may work, but it can also go the other way. Like, I mean, you know, it can backfire because, like, you know, coming out of their 20s, like when they finally hit 30, they just feel so burnt out. Like when it's really their time to work, they don't want to work then, you know. So I mean, now I also feel like, you know, it's fun being a workaholic for me because I had such a party.
Zeb, you always mentioned that your family was very musical, और हानिया भी आई तो वो यही बता रही थी कि बहुत इंस्ट्रूमेंट्स होते थे और सबको गाने का शौक था. How was it like? Tell us a little bit, share that insider story with us.
So I mean, like, you know, like pretty much like same thing. I mean, it felt normal because that was the extended family was just like that. So I didn't realize that people were not like that. Like, you know, like foodie families think that that's what all families do when they sit around.
Right.
You know, like in Lahore, every family thinks that, you know, family means food, right? But then you go to places where that's not the case. So people are not obsessed with eating all the time. So I think that's what it was like. And food and singing kind of went hand in hand.
Okay.
We would eat tons, and then we would sit and we would either watch and also, you know, we hardly watched movies. Nobody like would talk about movies. People were always talking about songs, even the elders. So, you know, so they would say कि हाँ guide के गाने, like ये सारी movies जो हैं ये मैंने खुद से देखी थी. I was never shown these movies. It was always songs. You know, you had those VHS cassettes of like 3 or 4 hours of songs worth of songs. And that's something that just kept happening. And that was the end of it, really. Like, I mean, there were a lot of, and I think because there was very keen listenership, you know, my ustad always says that you have to give a country, you know, that a country is keen about music, not when it produces a lot of artists, but when it produces real keen listeners. And, you know, I also saw that in India, is that, you know, even though in, you know, in Pakistan, we produce some really great artists that even, you know, do really well. But I think we've really failed at producing keen listeners. And wo cheez jo hai, but that happens also at a very young age. You have to start learning how to sit and listen to music. Sometimes, you know, you'll go into a mehfil, which is supposed to be ghazals, and like there are grown men and women who are talking in the middle, getting up, you know, not getting the point of it, getting impatient, not allowing themselves to even take it in. So I think that's what I really remember, is that everyone was a very keen listener of music, and we all used to sit together, and that's the one, you know, the one thing that we used to do is, and somehow, maybe because of my grandmother, everyone had a beautiful voice. The one person who didn't have the most beautiful voice was my mother.
Okay.
Ironically.
All right. Okay. Acha, I can partly relate to what you were saying because I not to this extent जो आपकी family में था, but so my maternal side is Kashmiri and तो वहाँ पे सबको ढोलक बहुत amazing बजानी आती है. I mean, my mother is like 5 sisters. She's the youngest of 5 sisters और मतलब literally शादियों पे ये हो रहा होता था कि मैंने ढोलक बजानी because amazing ढोलक and then बहुत खूबसूरत आवाजें and they would sing those पुराने कश्मीरी गाने जो हमने that हम तो काला शाह काला काला
हाँ,
स्या काला ऐसे गाने गाते थे but
हाँ,
वो ऐसे ऐसे गाने गाते थे जो हमने नहीं सुने होते थे. फिर of course we made our diaries and what not and in those times किसी की शादी होती थी तो we would like sing songs on ढोलकी for over a month. हर रोज जा रहे हैं उनके घर और गाने गा रहे हैं उस तरह से. And I also thought कि सारी families में ऐसे होता होगा. So even in my own in-laws I realized that families are not everyone is musical. So
yeah.
so I can relate to what you're saying कि when you have it all around you you just realize कि यार ये तो सारा हर जगह ही होता है. लेकिन मुझे ये बताएं कि you did mention that your parents were different and sort of really open-minded, and also your nanny, you mentioned that the kind of change that she saw and then how she sort of evolved and adapted and changed herself. But did you face any sort of any problems or any criticism for really being going out there and singing and taking up singing as a profession in your extended family या कहीं पे भी किसी से सुना आपने या
I'm sure hota hoga, like how
okay
is it possible if you have an extended family, how will they not say that
right
something you're doing is wrong? But the
okay
good thing is that they'll do that in any case. She's not getting married, she got married, she doesn't have children, she has children, like
okay
it's
okay
always there, right? I'm sure
right
it was, but nothing was
yeah
ever said to me
okay
specifically. And I think
okay
it's also that my parents themselves have such a demeanor about it.
mm,
They were like for that I think I'll give the most credit to my father, because
mm,
हमेशा ये ऐसी चीज होती है ना कि हमारी जैसे families में if like a girl is singing, then it's always the father who's like looked at कि oh he would probably disapprove.
right
But because my father was he himself, actually his family is also very musical, and my grandfather apparently used to play the rabab, which I don't remember. My father
अच्छा
has a very beautiful voice also. He sings like
okay
Mana Day and all, and they're big music enthusiasts. So he was so excited about everything. So the way he would even tell like the other
mm,
men in the family is like
mm,
that they would know what to say,
mm.
because
Okay,
you
all
know
right, so it was
it's
easy for
it's
you.
it's अजीब सी वो जो आजादी नहीं होती है कि जिस
Hmm.
तरह जैसे पुराने जमाने में कहते थे कि like shadi was your way to like actually finding freedom sometimes,
Right.
because you could wear what you wanted to and wear
Yeah.
makeup and things like that. So
Right.
for me it was also like my father's like uh, the way he
Hmm.
interacted with everybody कि ठीक है मेरी
Right.
बेटी है, she's doing what she's doing, so
Right.
people
So
were very
she.
nice.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Acha, Zeb, you did mention about your Ustad a couple of times, right? And Ustad Nasiruddin Sami, right? And I remember that 2016, maybe I was in India shooting, I went to get the concluding shots for my book. Sana se meri baat ho rahi thi. And so, because she's a common friend, तो बात हो रही थी, and she said कि she was also telling me at that time कि आप you're trying to really promote your ustad, and now the whole world can see basically because you are really one can see you're making an effort. So in a world where people are so so just concerned about their own success and where they are, why do you feel the need, why do you feel it so strongly? Because apparently I think you're also working on a documentary, uh, I read somewhere, yeah, on him. So why did you feel that need to give him that recognition, which was of course due to him, but where does that come from?
So yeah, I was just saying, part of my tarbiyat is that, you know, this idea कि आप किसी को कुछ भी नहीं देते हैं और कोई आपसे कुछ नहीं लेता. Ultimately, it's you know it's God's will, and it's the risk that was given to you. So that is meant for you will come your way, and you know, sometimes we can be conduits for someone else's destiny, but it's never due to us. That's not the thing. So I don't look at it like that at all. Also, specifically of the project that you're talking about, that was, I was a part of it, and I definitely, you know, really, you know, wanted to work in it, work in that direction and work for it. But, you know, another person who did a lot of the groundwork for that was Ali Sethi. And, you know, who's also learning from Jan. So he actually got in touch with Ian and made this whole thing happen. Baki jo baat hai na, Mavish, it's another thing that I think we've lost, is that Jan is not my teacher. So there's a very big difference between teacher and ustad, you know. It's not the same format. It's not like he comes and he delivers a lecture and then I learn and he says, ye karo, and I do it. And then, you know, it's not based on that. Like, he's an ustad shagirdi thing again, because it's again goes back to not having those stories or ways to relate to how the East even looked at knowledge, you know, and the transference of knowledge. It happened very much through nisbat and relationship, and that's why it's a one-on-one situation. So I'm not promoting him, or I mean, I dare not. Who am I to promote him? Like, there's nothing like that is happening. It's just that his work and what he does is so, it's groundbreaking in today's world. It's an ancient art form, but he's the only one performing it. And it's an ancient art form that has no iteration today. So it's actually, you know, the most modern, and I think I owe it to the world more than to Jan to bring that forward. You know, that's how I see it. I also owe it to myself and to other children, because when I was growing up, and you know, especially मैं college में थी जब ये सब कुछ चल रहा था, you know, the war on terror and all of that stuff, and came back, and the prejudices, and you know, we have such an interesting relationship to our religion, because some of it is, and our religious communities, because some of it is based entirely on fear and shame and guilt, and others it's based on like this sense of high and mightiness and woe, but it's never based on, you know, it's never based on culture, because we're not allowed that relationship to it, you know. Our very enlightened people don't allow it, because they don't want to talk about religion in any case, you know. The intelligentsia doesn't want to talk about it, they don't want to get into it. And then, you know, and then the very like hardlining people also don't want it. But actually, the real beauty that I see in Jan, and why it's a service to I think, you know, to people, for people, I mean, it's be a service to the world to make him visible, is because he's kind of a living museum of Muslim history in the subcontinent. I mean, he doesn't have a beard, but you know, he's one of the most religious people I know, truly, deeply religious people. He has, you know, he's extremely strict about music, and he thinks like a scientist, yet he's so open-minded. And it's not just open-minded in terms of like, you know, okay, he's open-minded, okay, I'm a girl and Ali is a boy and he's teaching us, but he's open-minded in ways that we thought did not exist in the classical music world. Matlab, I'm not from a gharana. I'm not from his baradri, from his gharana. वो मुझे ऐसी चीजें दे रहे हैं जो कि आज कोई उस्ताद बजाय अपने बेटे भतीजे को नहीं देते. This is also true for India, by the way,
Mm.
because I wanted to go to India to learn. I almost got thing, but it's the same thing. All of my friends who are learning classical music there deal with the same distresses. They learn, they learn for decades and decades, and at the end, the ustad will give the real thing to the son or to their daughter. You know, that's why you never hear of someone other than their family coming forward. So I mean, like, he's really outside of him being my, just as, again, as a curious minded person and someone who's interested in history and identity, I couldn't believe that I didn't know anything about this man. So I was like, at least people should know who he is. And all I'm trying to do is like connect him to people. Baki to unka kaam hi aisa hai, like, there's this in New York, there's this really well-known academy. Samir Chatterjee is a brilliant, most respected tabla player and also classical musician and teacher. And so he has a yearly concert, and John was the main artist of that concert a few years ago in New York. And I was there to witness it. कि जो मैं सोच रही थी about that music, khayal gaiki, which is actually, a kind of a spiritual iteration of rags and wo. So, I mean, there were people in that crowd. There were like around 400-500 people. Most of them were not even Desi, let alone Pakistani. And he was singing his music, and they were weeping. There were tears in their eyes.
Mm.
They were around him, flocking around him like thing. So it's not so much that I want to promote him and he's my teacher. It's just that, for the sake of the arts and for the sake of ourselves and for the sake of, like, you see something great, you want other people to also know about it. That's how it is. And then, the work and the man speaks for himself, I think.
Yeah, and that speaks a lot about you as a person also. So I think you need to give some credit to yourself as well. This is amazing. Like you said, the world needs to know. But then, if you are in that position to do it, then you take it upon yourself, and you take it as a responsibility.
मुझे
So
फायदा बहुत हुआ माविश, like मुझे बहुत फायदा हुआ. It was a real transformative experience for me to meet him. Like जो आप बात कर रहे हो about ठहराव, about things like that. So these are like real, these are things that take you a long time. So इस वजह से really.
all right, and Zeb, how do you define success? What is success for you?
Just feeling content, feeling happy with yourself, feeling love, and being able to give it. Having an open heart. Like, I think you're successful when you're able to do that.
Thank you so much, Zeb. I was going to ask you about the Brooklyn-based musician group that you have, Sandara, and I read somewhere where you said that the objective is to record music that features the works of brilliant Urdu poets in the subcontinent. And I was looking at your work, and I was thinking that you're not just singing. You're creating music, and not only that, you are really reviving the forgotten literature and languages. And just before we let you go, would it be possible for you to sing something for us, please?
Sure.
Okay.
This is a song actually that it was made famous by it was a very serious minded movie, but it was made, there was a child, or it featured the child Urmila in it.
Okay.
Lakdi Ki Kathi. It's my favorite
Oh,
childhood song.
yes,
So I
absolutely.
thought I'd sing that. I think Adi
Yes,
Burman
please.
composed it.
Okay.
लकड़ी की काठी काठी पे घोड़ा घोड़े की दुम पे जो मारा हथौड़ा दौड़ा 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 घोड़ा दुम दबा के दौड़ा लकड़ी की काठी काठी पे घोड़ा घोड़े की दुम पे जो मारा हथौड़ा दौड़ा 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 घोड़ा दुम दबा के दौड़ा घोड़ा पहुंचा चौक में था नाई, घोड़े जी की नाई ने हजामत जो बनाई। चकपक 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 चकपक। घोड़ा पहुंचा चौक में था नाई, घोड़े जी की नाई ने हजामत जो बनाई। दौड़ा 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 घोड़ा धूम दबा के दौड़ा, लकड़ी की काठी
काठी पे
काठी पे
घोड़ा।
घोड़ा, घोड़े की दुम पे जो मारा थोड़ा, दौड़ा 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 घोड़ा धूम दबा के दौड़ा।
Thank you so much, Jay. Thank you so much for your time. Really enjoyed it.
Thank you. It's lovely to see you again.